off and get started right now, and I'm proud to introduce to you Dr. Newell.
Hi there, everybody. I am super excited about this opportunity to chat with you today. I'm joined by three teachers who are way more knowledgeable about our topic today than I am, probably both because they've been living in a remote learning environment with their students for over a month now. And I think they also, some of them at least, may have some children at home that they're having to homeschool now and also navigate the challenges of work. And so I'm going to let them introduce themselves here in just a minute. But before we do, I just want to talk a little bit about kind of the overview of how we designed the things that we have designed for the Parent University series. We knew that there was a need to respond to how hard this is for families at home. It's hard from a scheduling standpoint, from this is a global pandemic crisis standpoint. The day-to-day routines, even though we've definitely been in this for a few weeks now, and so we're more used to it, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's any easier. And so we wanted to provide some guidance on topics that parents were still telling us that they needed some help with. And so we launched the survey as part of the GCISD update last week, and we received about 120 some odd responses. They're still coming in a little bit more slowly now. But we really took every single one of those responses and color-coded them according to different categories in terms of what were the most frequently asked questions that might be an easy answer that we could post in an FAQ document, but also in terms of things that might be lengthier topics for discussion in a Parent University WebEx event session. And so we decided to start in week 1 with WebEx event sessions geared towards elementary families or families of elementary students. And then we'll do another one on Thursday, and that's for families of secondary students. So if you're a parent of a secondary student and you've tuned in for this particular session, sometimes there's not a huge difference between an elementary student and a secondary student. So you could still stick around and get some good tips. But know that we've got another Thursday event scheduled with some secondary teachers that is designed with adolescent kiddos in mind. And so we actually have a third panelist who will be joining us here in a minute. But as we've all learned over the last few weeks, sometimes technology does not do what we want it to do when we want it to do it. We have an amazing Chief Technology Officer. First of all, thank you to Kyle Berger, who has helped to set this up and make it as seamless as possible. And I just want to take my hat off to all the parents and all the teachers who have navigated these first few weeks of the school closure with just grace and humility and patience. It has been a lot for any of us to handle, but I also have started to see from my perspective, in terms of the work we do with teaching and learning and curriculum and instruction, some silver linings that are starting to come out of it in terms of new routines and capabilities that we never thought were possible in terms of collaboration for planning for learning, and then also just some independence for students in their learning when they don't have their teacher and the same forms of accountability that they would have had before. So I am going to be quiet. I'm going to lead us into the slideshow, and this will be archived, and we're actually going to take the text of the slideshow and turn it into a Google Doc so it can be more easily translated for families of other languages who have different home languages, so that we make sure that they can enjoy the benefit of this conversation as well. So the focus of today's university, which I've already kind of talked about, is factors contributing to a productive home learning environment, establishing routines and time management and expectations for independent versus dependent learning. I asked that some of the campus staff that I interact with most frequently for teachers that they knew would be kind of exemplars in these areas that are handling this really well with their own students. And that's how we got our panelists today. Actually, we had nominations for a large number of people. We just couldn't have 27 moderators in one WebEx session and have it be efficient. So we're going to hear from a kindergarten teacher, hopefully Jennifer Pettit, who will be joining us here in just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and jump over to the next slide. Candice Olson, who's a second grade teacher at Timberline, and Kelsey Hocker. Hocker or Hawker, I'm not sure. Hocker? Okay. She's a fourth grade teacher at Bransford Elementary in the humanities classes. And so I'm just going to go ahead and start with Candace, let you introduce yourself and talk about your biggest celebration and maybe also your biggest challenge that you have had to navigate through these first few weeks.
Hi, I'm Candice Olson. I teach second grade at Timberline Elementary. And my biggest celebration is just getting to see my class on a weekly basis, getting to see their faces. And not only that, but they are taking so much ownership over their work, their online learning, and they're so proud to share, what they've gotten done for the day or the week. So it's really cool to see them in a new light. And then my biggest challenge, I think I share with many parents because I am not only a teacher of a classroom full of second graders, but I'm also a parent to a 3 and a 13-year-old. It's not easy to be a homeschool teacher. Even as a second grade teacher, it's difficult to work with my own two children at home. I never feel like I'm doing enough for either my classroom kids or my personal kids. I kind of feel torn, and I know a lot of parents are feeling that way too. So you're not alone.
Definitely. Thank you so much. Kelsey.
Hi there, I am Kelsey Hawker. I'm a fourth grade humanities teacher at Bransford. And I would say that my biggest celebration for the kids, especially, is just their way of adjusting to this online learning. I know it's been challenging, but they've been taking it with full force and they've been doing an awesome job. And for me, just being able to find a way to connect with my kids, even through this without being in a classroom. And I would say probably the biggest challenge for me, I don't have kids of my own, but just making sure that the kids are staying engaged and trying to find a way to make sure I'm helping all of my families at home. So
Awesome, definitely. Thank you so much. So what we're going to do, the format we'll use today is I'm going to invite each of the speakers to, they've each sent me some talking points based on the purpose of the slides or the purpose of today's university. And here in just a little bit, after I kind of walk us through the process, we're just going to start. We'll probably start with you, Candace. We had planned to start in kindergarten and work our way up. But if Jennifer's able to jump in and join us, we'll definitely bring her in as well. We'll start with Candace, and you can kind of talk through some of the advice that you have and some things that have worked so far, both for you as a parent and for you as a teacher. One of the things that's challenging in designing a parent university like this for a very broad audience across the whole district is that every single home environment is different. Every single child is different. And so what works in one family might work horribly in the next family. And so we want to provide as much general advice and guidance as possible as we share some ideas. But we also know that part of what's going to be necessary is for parents to just sort of pick and choose the things that fit their child's temperament and fit their particular household situation. A situation where a student is an only child with working parents at home is very different than a child that's being cared for by older siblings because their parents have got to leave the home to go to work. And so it's impossible to provide one size fits all advice in the same way that it's impossible to provide one size fits all instruction right now. So that's kind of the disclaimer. But we do want to hear from parents in the chat menu because we know that we haven't thought of everything. What I would ask though in the chat questions is that if you have any specific questions about your child's particular teacher or that campus, that you would direct those towards the school, because we really can't speak to individual issues as we spend some time at the end of the chat. But we would welcome any questions that might be germane to a wider audience that we could speak in more general terms. We also have added a frequently asked questions link that is being updated literally hourly on the GCISD website. And before we wrap up, I will show that link. And some of the questions from today might find their way onto that document before too long. So that's are kind of the parameters. And we're going to jump right on in. Now I'm going to skip over Jennifer's slide right there, although this will be part of the archive if we're not able to enjoy her voice in the presentation today. All right, so Candace, what advice do you have for parents as we navigate this time?
Okay, one thing before I get started, and I don't know if this is because I'm a panelist, but I'm not able to see the slideshow. So I'll just go off my notes. I don't know why that is. Okay. So my advice to parents, the first thing that I told my classroom full of parents was to create a schedule for the day. For the non-readers that can't read a schedule, like my 3-year-old, we have pictures, little icons that I've drawn to kind of break up the activities for the day. Definitely try to stick to the schedule as much as you can, but, just give yourself some grace that, maybe it's not busy, maybe your kid's not in the best mind frame. Just know that you can be flexible with your schedule. It's not the end of the world if you cannot follow that schedule. Definitely have a realistic start and stop time. Your child is not going to be working the whole school day, that 7:30 to 2:50. That's just not realistic for being at home. I had a parent that said, my student is working 9 to 5. I'm like, wow, that's more than I'm working right now. So that's not a realistic start and stop time. So, a few hours is a little bit more realistic with some breaks built in. My personal kids, they each have their own space. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. They just take up each end of the kitchen table and they have their little bucket of supplies. So I think having a space that they can go to every time that doesn't change is going to be really helpful in setting that routine for daily learning. Also, what I do with my 13-year-old is when he gets his instructions in the morning, before we start any activity, we go over it together and I help him answer any questions, help him find websites that he might not be able to find. So I think going over the schedule before the day starts is going to minimize that coming to you all the time asking for help. And that's really important, I know, because if you're working from home, it's so hard to help your own kid while you're trying to work. I know it's almost impossible. And that goes for you too. You need a parent space also. I have my space and they know if mommy's working there, I need to either go do something else until she's able to help me. So having your own space, I think, is really important too. Your child is going to be able to work independently on some things, and they're going to sometimes need your help. So I think letting them know that there's a time for independent work time and there's a time you can come to me. Letting them know when are those windows, setting that routine early so that they're not coming to you all the time. And the length of time is going to be different for each child depending on what grade they're in. So I spent a lot of one-on-one time with my 3-year-old, whereas my 13-year-old, I only kind of assist him maybe once every hour or so. And then it's really important to give your child lots of frequent breaks. This is new for everybody. Just giving them opportunities to go outside or use their iPad for non-learning, something fun that they can do, or giving them a creative time to just be kids, because at the end of the day, they learn a lot from being creative as well.
I don't know if I can jump in and kind of moderate that point a little bit, is just definitely kids need recess every day. And so they, in the same way that they need recess during the school day, they need it at home as well. And so sometimes just that fresh break allows the brain to work more efficiently in the rest of the time as well.
Mine had some on Friday, just sitting inside of big Amazon boxes, coloring and decorating the inside of the boxes. So just things like that as well. You need that built-in break time. A lot of parents in my class have asked me, what can I do to get my child working? They won't do anything, or they're refusing, or they have a bad attitude. And I've recommended doing some kind of incentive chart, or maybe marbles in the jar, or a checklist where they can earn things. Kids are sometimes hard to motivate. I know my personal kids are hard to motivate. So letting them earn things like extra screen time, family game nights, cooking with mom or dad, FaceTiming a friend or a relative, little things that they can earn will motivate them more. And then my last piece of advice is, the kids are learning from you also. They're learning at home, not just from the stuff that their teacher sends. There's lots of learning chances in everyday life. So I know I was talking to mine about, setting a budget and sticking to and paying bills and credit cards. And then my 3-year-old was helping me. We were making chocolate chip cookies and we were doing fractions with that. And we wrote letters to the grandparents. So we got to practice some writing skills also. It's really a stressful time. It really is. So you're going to have to give yourself some grace and be forgiving. And sometimes the activities that the teacher sends, for example, I was trying to help my 3-year-old write his name. He's really close on it, but he was throwing his marker, which your kids do that too, I promise. Our literacy activity for the day was we cuddled up and we were reading a book. So, you don't have to be perfect. Nobody's perfect. And I'd say just, give yourself some grace. So.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. I think that's the perfect word for your portion to end on, and that is just the word grace. I've talked to my team about that because this is completely uncharted territory, and we have got to be forgiving with ourselves, and that goes for the teachers and the students and the kids. It's a great model for the kids to learn as well. It's just to be like, okay, this was hard, this was yucky, and next time it'll be better, hopefully. So, Kelsey, I would love for you to jump in. Now that I think I need to apologize. I think that the slides were not showing the way I had thought that they were. I toggled back and forth between the presenter view and my slides. So we will go back and make sure that everybody can see the slides at the beginning as well. But Kelsey, walk us through some of the advice you have for students, especially the upper elementary students that you have been working with.
Yeah, definitely. So to start off with the student work time, students can do a lot more work independently, and I feel like giving them that responsibility has been really helpful just for my class, especially like in the upper elementary grades. And to kind of go off what Candace was saying, the check-in time at the beginning of the day can be really helpful, and it can also shorten that amount of interruptions during the day. Like even just spending 10 minutes going over their daily checklist to see, oh, is this app working or does this website work? And that can also be a great time to ask teachers questions. And then also we found that they're doing like a parent check out at the end of the day is also really helpful. Going over and showing, okay, what assignments were complete? What did you need help with? What kind of work can be done throughout the day was really helpful just for my team in 4th grade to kind of go over together. And then something that we found out was really helpful was taking advantage of timers. So kids I know can set timers on their iPads using that alarm clock app, and even just giving themselves like 30 minutes for their reading assignments today. And if they finish early, they can grab a book and find a spot in their house somewhere to read. And then adding in that break time is really beneficial. Those kids, they need a break. They need to get outside like we were all talking about earlier. And so that's been really helpful and beneficial. And then the digital versus non-digital time has also been a conversation that we have had as a school and as a team. And knowing that it is okay to not do all the work on their iPad and to be able to go and do it on a piece of paper or in a journal, especially for reading and writing, a lot of that can be done outside of technology. But then depending on what the teacher's assignments are, there is a lot of digital things that we have all found to be beneficial and found as ways to be helpful and engaging to those students and keeping them interactive. And then going off of also Candace's incentive programs, my team has decided that we would do like WebEx lunches for completion or just working really hard. And I'm sure that if you reached out to your teachers, they would be more than happy to do something like that as well, because I know it's fun for me to see the kids' faces, but I think it's also fun for them to see ours. And so that was just a fun little thing that we've started and they really enjoy. But then also, I don't have kids of my own, as I said earlier, but a lot of families have been like having the child pick dinner that night or getting to choose like an outside activity that weekend that they could all do together. I even have a group of girls that when they finish their work on Fridays, they all get to do a WebEx together. And I know that they get excited about that. So it's just a few things to keep them going.
I love that you gave all of those ideas. And I also love that you suggested, like if a family sees a need that they think would really help to incentivize their child or motivate them, like a separate WebEx or some sort of a lunch meeting or whatever, just to bring those ideas forward to the teachers. That doesn't mean that it always necessarily will work out in the schedule or that it's possible, because there are a lot of factors that also are hard to account for in our teachers' home lives as well right now. But I love that you did that, because the families, the parents who are living with our kiddos at home are probably the most qualified to know, okay, this one's going to be motivated by this one's going to be motivated by this is the way in which I can navigate it day by day. And sometimes it's different week by week. One of the things we started doing, kind of to your point about the picking dinner or that sort of thing, is I've been the one that I have a 17-year-old and a 21-year-old at home. So it's been a long time since they were elementary students. But even something as silly as like writing out a menu on a little board in the kitchen. These are today's snacks and this is what's for dinner, so that we start mentally preparing for that. And then sometimes we trade off and they get to be the planners and the grocery list makers or whatever it is. And incentivizing it. It's amazing how excited we get about dinner nowadays in my house, that we typically don't have more than about one full meal together in the house prior to COVID. And so we're starting to learn new routines to get excited about. And I have found it most helpful when I think outside of my old box, right? A lot of my frustrations come when I try to think about how to do my old world in this new universe, because I'm holding myself to those standards and thinking through those exact routines when really we're in a completely new environment. And when I was able to let go of some of the trappings and expectations of my old schedule and really look at my life now and what was necessary in order for us to navigate all the schedules. I've got 4 people in my house on 4 different sets of web calls, literally right this very minute. And that calls for a whole different type of coordination and planning. So thank you so much for touching on that. I'm going to go back up in the slides. I know we're kind of close towards the end, but I'm going to trust Kyle to be collecting any chat questions to add here in just a minute. But we started off with kind of an overview and talked through the focus. And then we've introduced our 3 teachers. Jennifer Pettit is having all kinds of technology problems on the backside. My text thread is lighting up, and she's so sad and I'm disappointed that she couldn't be here to share. But the beautiful thing is that we did get her content that is added in there, and we might loop her back into a future conversation because I know she has a lot to share. We've got some other topics that we might be able to weave her contributions into. So, Kyle, I'm going to toss it back to you. Oh my goodness, I just saw Jennifer's initials show up on the screen. That is hilarious. Are you there? Can you hear us, Jennifer?
Here, I can hear you.
Oh my goodness, that's so exciting. Well, thank you for joining us.
I'm so sorry about that. I tried the whole time. So
We do not doubt that, even for a minute. I'm super glad that you're able to join us. I tell you what I'd like you to do, and were you able to hear the rest of the conversation?
yes, I was listening to you guys the whole time.
Okay, well, I tell you what, why don't you talk just a little bit about life with kindergartners and the routines that, and really this isn't just limited to kindergarten parents, but I just know that sometimes what works for a 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old is a little bit different than what works for an 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old or so. Why don't you talk a little bit about some of the things that you know to be helpful for parents as they work through home environments for kindergartners right now?
Absolutely. I think just to piggyback off of some things that Candace said, I think we had a lot of similarities with just one of the most important things is designating a learning space for your child. I know that when they're at home, it doesn't feel like the school environment, and especially with the younger students, really what's key is the routines that we have in place at school. And so to establish that kind of routine at home where they have a designated space for learning and they have materials there and they're expected to work when they get there kind of creates that same routine and emulates what we do at school. So I would definitely say that is an important thing. And then I had just wanted to speak for a minute to Seesaw. The kindergarten teachers across the district have been collaborating together on WebEx meetings, and we have all been taking advantage of some of the really great things that they have available for students to learn independently because our guys are so little. And so they have some audio directions that the kiddos can listen to on their own, and we're trying to make the lessons and the activities where they can do a lot of it independently. But again, like Candace said, just to have designated times that you expect your child to kind of work independently, where at the beginning, you kind of go over everything they're doing, get them started on some things that they might be able to do on their own, and then have an established time when you say, this is a time that you can come to me when you need assistance. So I know many parents are working from home, and it's just, keeping all those balls in the air and knowing that they have a time they can come to you and other times they need to be doing it on their own. But for our little guys, just establishing a routine and a schedule, kind of doing the same thing every day and taking lots of breaks is so beneficial for them. They need movement. I know sitting at home doing work on the computer, like I'm not as tired at nighttime because I'm not moving my body as much, and I'm trying to be really aware of that in this really strange time. But for those little guys, they need even 3 times as much movement as we do as an adult. So they need to be getting up and moving. We have Go Noodle, and we have videos that we can certainly share with them, but just getting outside and letting them play and having those unplugged times, balancing that technology, the times that they're looking at their menus and what we pushed out to them on their iPads, but then also using a pen and pencil and writing, or being creative, building, running around, whatever they need to do.
I think some of the important things that you touched on there is that right now, your home, your apartment, wherever you live, is your classroom. And so thinking about the backyard or a walk down the street or whatever it is as playground time, and just thinking outside of the box of what you have available as a resource. Also, environmental print. I taught first grade, and so I remember how important environmental print was. And I hadn't really thought about using the cereal box for that, or the milk carton for that, or the whatever, but those are great sources of learning tools as well. And our busy lives often prevent us from taking the time, maybe, to study environmental print in our households the way we could, but this is a perfect opportunity for that. Recipes, there's no better way to teach math than through a recipe that's going to reward you with a batch of cookies or something afterward. I'm a big fan of that. So thank you for bringing those things into the conversation as well. One of the things that you touched on, Jennifer, and especially I think this is maybe harder or more important for the primary grades. I'm flashing back to my first grade days, and so often students at that age have a harder time with impulse control. And so when they need you immediately, like right then and there, which can be really hard if you're a working mom and you're on a live web call right now for the whole district, and you know that you can't be interrupted. And so one of the routines that I think is really important, I've heard some people talking about, is having routines where students are able to discreetly let their parents know that help is needed, whether that's through some sort of a visible signal, like I'm going to put this red cup on the table when I need help, and that's within eyeshot of mom or dad's workstation or whatever. Or one of the things I used to do with my own kiddos when they were little is, and because I got so tired of being yanked on by the arm and, the jump up and down and the arms waving and all of that, is literally I just asked them to come and touch my back when they needed me to give them immediate attention. And that way it didn't have to interrupt the thing I was doing right at that live moment, but it gave me a subtle, little 911 that I'm going to need to pretty quickly turn my face and give them that attention. And those are routines that are going to take a little bit of time to establish, and you're going to have to reinforce those routines, but they can make working at home as an adult a lot more manageable while you have a small child.
I was going to say that we actually do teach an interrupting rule that's just very similar to what you just shared in kindergarten, which is if they need a teacher, then they just gently put their hand on their arm, and we cover their hand with our hand to let them know that we need them, but our attention's on something else, and that we will be with them when we can give them our full attention, and they know to go wait until we can be there. And so, things like that are just really helpful because it's all that extra stimulus, when you're at home and things are different.
Yeah, absolutely. And we go to school to be educators. And so some of this happens because of what we learn in teacher school, but some of it also happens with a lot of the experience that we get in the classroom. And parents haven't had the benefit of that necessarily. And so we usually spend the first week, 2, 3 of the school year teaching routines and procedures for how to be how to function well within the classroom in order for learning to be able to occur. And so parents, you should not feel even a little bit conspicuous about the fact that it's taken you a little while to get in the groove of putting routines and procedures in place so that learning can happen and life in this new normal can happen at home as well. I checked in with Kyle via text a minute ago, and he said we did not have any questions in the chat menu. And so I'm going to scroll right on past that, and I think we've done a little bit of in closing, but do any of you have any kind of closing remarks that you'd like to add that you haven't had a chance to share yet within the call?
I was actually going to jump in on what you guys were just talking about. I know this is kind of the reverse situation, but I know I taught first grade for a few years, and now in fourth grade, we've done the same thing. But if I'm doing like a small group or something where I can't get to their attention immediately, I put a light on. So I don't know if you have a lamp at home or something like that that you could put on your desk for working parents, but they knew that when the light was on that I was busy, and once the light was off, I could get to them right away. So that's kind of a reverse situation, but like if you are doing a WebEx, you could turn the light on so that they know, oh, my parents can't get to me right now, but in a little bit when the light's off, I can come back. I don't know if that could be really beneficial as well.
Absolutely. Anybody else with a closing word?
We use sticky notes a lot in my house. So write whatever help they need, put it on sticky notes, stick it on my desk, and walk away. And they know that mom will help me when she's free.
I love it. That's
I
awesome.
would say parents are doing the very best they can, and we see that and we recognize that, and we are just so thankful to have them as partners in their child's education.
Absolutely. One last question that Kyle did send me that I think is definitely worthy of taking a moment with before we completely sign off. And that is from a parent that said, when you decide to take an extra break or not do an assignment because there's a meltdown or some stress at home, how do you handle the doubled work the next day to catch up on that? That's gone poorly for us because it compounds the frustration. I'm so glad you asked that question. I would really kind of, number one, you're doing the right thing by pushing the pause button when there's a meltdown. There's absolutely, what we know about the brain research is that when the brain is in stress, it can't learn. And so you've got to, whether it's taking a short break, 5 or 10 minutes, getting a drink of water, there's actually a lot of science behind literally taking a few drinks of water and doing some like intentional breathing that literally de-stresses the brain chemically. And so I would definitely not underestimate the power of that. But if it needs to be taking a break for the rest of the day and going back to it the next day, I would just say, you know what, we pick up tomorrow. I might email the teacher and let the teacher know that we are pacing ourselves right now and that we're going to get back on course eventually, but you're doing the best you can. And that what I've heard from teachers across the district is, as long as I know that they're engaging in the way that they can at their house, we are going to work with them and not hold them to any sort of rigid schedule that is nearly as structured as due dates and the kinds of things that we had when we were back in regular face-to-face school. So communication with the teacher is super important. They might be able to either extend a timeline or even reduce the length of an assignment just to make sure that the learning objective is handled. But the last thing we want to do is perpetuate a frustrating situation. Do y'all have anything you would add to that? Get a thumbs up from the teachers.
Just that with the littles, we just spend a lot of time teaching them strategies to calm down. And like you said, we teach them that when their lid is flipped, that they're unable to process, logical information. So that's why I really suggest having maybe a time in the morning and then another time in the afternoon that you could revisit those things. And I know with our students at school, they're 5, but they know themselves, and we can say, do you think you're ready to revisit this now? Are you ready to learn? Mm-hmm. I totally agree with everything you said.
Yeah. One of the things that that is a truth in instruction in the normal world, but I've been able to apply it in the COVID universe as well, is that really the best benefit to learning is when you do calm down, or you get out of that hard situation, even if it's a hard learning situation, and you reflect on it when you have the benefit of a little bit of distance. So if a mom and a child the mom or the child has a meltdown, because on some days that could happen in either direction. But just when there is a more calm environment, to just sit down and reflect on that and show, this is what set me off, this is how I can avoid that happening again, and this is what I need to do as a result of the reflection on that. And that's so helpful, because it shows that cool-headed reflection is always a part of that learning process.
And I think it's important to know that, your teachers are here to support you. Like last week, I had a parent email and say, my child is throwing temper tantrums. We've been working on this problem solving all week, and she's just really kind of up to here with problem solving. And just having that conversation with the teacher, I was able to tell parent, I can see all the work that your child's done. I know that she has mastered that skill. It's okay if you want to take an assignment off of her list. We don't want them to feel overwhelmed. We don't want them to hate this online learning environment. We want them to feel proud, and we want them to feel successful.
Absolutely. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up. Thank you again to my 3 teacher panelists. Jennifer, we're so glad to see your face. I thank you for persisting. And I can't take my hat off enough to the 3 of you and all of the folks behind the scenes that you represent, because this is so challenging. I think we're going to be better as a profession as a result of it, because we've all had to learn so many new things, and we've all come to appreciate each other face to face more than we ever thought possible. But thank you for taking some time out today and joining our chat. The last slide is one that is a little bit incomplete right now, but when it is archived, it will have all the right links. And we're compiling for each topic that we address in Parent University. We're going to compile resources on the last slide. Literally about 15 minutes before today's Parent University started. I don't think the FAQ link was live on the new Parent University website, but I think it is now. So I'm going to go and tidy this slide up here a little bit so that when it's posted, it has all the links you need. But it's going to have resources and answers to some of the questions that were asked on the survey last week by parents in the community. So again, thank you so much for joining us. And our next topic, like I said, in case you chimed in late, on Thursday, it will be a panel of a couple of secondary teachers talking about this same sort of thing: routines, procedures, time management, at-home management for secondary students. So thank you to my elementary friends, and thank you to Mr. Berger for making all the technology magic happen behind the scenes.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for attending today. We look forward to seeing you again, and we'll have this online soon for further review. Thanks for all the participation. Great job, panel. Thank you all for parents doing all that you're doing at home in this new normal we're in. Appreciate you all.
Thank you.
Great day.
Bye.